My name is Jessica. I was 27 when my parents said I was embarrassing them during my own engagement dinner. It was supposed to be a celebration. We were at this charming bistro near the marina, the kind with white string lights and soft jazz humming through the outdoor heaters. Michael had made the reservation himself. My best friend Megan helped me pick the burgundy dress. I hadn't felt that pretty in years. The night started perfectly until they showed up. My mom wore her usual country club neutral outfit: bone-colored cardigan, stiff beige trousers, pearls that hadn't been real in a decade. My dad gave Michael a limp handshake like he was meeting a sales intern. I thought they were just tense, but I was wrong. Things turned sharp the moment Michael raised his glass. To the woman who made me believe in forever, Jessica, my heart, my future wife. Megan clapped. I blushed, and my mom cleared her throat. Well, let's not get carried away, she said lightly. You're not married yet. Laughter didn't follow. Michael chuckled politely. I laughed just to fill the air, but the mood had shifted. My dad spent the rest of dinner with his eyes on the next table. My mom picked apart her food like she was on a tasting panel. They asked nothing about the proposal, our plans, the ring. Then Megan mentioned the venue we were looking at in Vermont. It's an old greenhouse that's been converted into a reception hall, she gushed. So, Jessica, my mom blinked. Outdoors, in your condition? What condition? I asked. Well, emotional instability runs in our family, just making sure you're not rushing. I froze. Even Michael froze. Mom, I said sharply. She waved me off. Oh, don't be so sensitive. Then the waiter brought the cake. It was simple: white with red script. Congratulations, Jessica and Michael. My mom scoffed. Little premature, don't you think? I mean, we've barely gotten to know him. That's when I stood up. Megan grabbed my wrist under the table. Michael looked at me like he wanted to scoop me away from the whole world. I need air, I said. I walked down the sidewalk, shaking. The wind off the marina made my eyes sting. Or maybe it wasn't the wind. Michael caught up, breathless. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I thought they'd be different. They weren't even trying, I said. And they weren't, but I thought it was just a bad dinner. Until the next morning. Heather posted a photo on her story, a golden pink invitation, engagement brunch for Heather and Ben, vineyard location, custom calligraphy, lavender ribbon. They'd been dating less than 3 months, and the caption? Our parents are overjoyed. My stomach dropped. I zoomed in on the invite. Date, next weekend. Venue, the same place we talked about booking for our wedding. The parking lot was already full when we pulled up to the vineyard. Michael's hands clenched the steering wheel, eyes flicking to the rows of pastel cars lined perfectly under the pines. I can wait out here, he said gently. No, I snapped, then softened. No, you're with me. I wore the same burgundy dress from our dinner, on purpose. Let them see me. The hostess greeted us with a rehearsed smile. Name? Jessica Morgan. Her smile faltered. She glanced down at the list. Then up again, quickly. Of course, this way. We were led past a manicured hedge toward the glass house. It was the same place Michael and I had toured in January, the same flower arch I'd pointed out, the same wine cellar we'd imagined photos in. Only now it was filled with balloons that said, "Love is in bloom," and a towering ice sculpture of 2 interlocked H's, Heather and Ben. I barely recognized her. My sister floated across the floor in an ivory wrap dress with gold stitching. She waved like we were old acquaintances, not blood. Jess, you made it! Her voice was sugary loud, aimed at the room. Every head turned, and then the silence dropped. My mother approached before I could speak. She kissed me on the cheek, stiff. So glad you could come. I stared at her. This was supposed to be our venue. She blinked, feigning confusion. Our? Michael and I toured this place. We discussed putting a deposit. Oh, honey, she said, brushing invisible lint from my shoulder. You hadn't confirmed anything, and Heather needed something fast. You understand. No apology, no shame, just logistics. Needed it fast? I repeated. She's only been dating him for 3 months. Mom smiled thinly. Some people just fit. Michael stepped beside me. His posture had changed, upright, guarded. We should go, he muttered, but I wasn't done. Across the room, Heather was posing with guests in front of the wine barrels. Dad was laughing, really laughing, like he hadn't just torn me in half 2 nights ago. There was a table near the back, a display of printed photos. I walked toward it. Michael followed close. They were all of Heather and Ben, some old, some clearly staged, but then tucked into the corner, one of me and Michael, from our college days. One of the pictures Megan took at our engagement dinner. I picked it up. It was inside a cheap silver frame. A small card underneath read, "Wishing the bride and groom the kind of love that lasts." Bride and groom? I looked around. Some of the guests were staring. Not cruelly, curiously. They thought we were the warm-up act, the tragic first draft. I placed the frame down. Slowly, then I turned to Michael. "I need to talk to Heather." He nodded once. I marched to her just as she was laughing at something Ben whispered in her ear. "Heather," she turned, and didn't even flinch. "Jessica, I'm glad you came, really." "You stole our venue," she tilted her head. "It was available." "You knew we were planning to book it." She sipped her champagne. "Well, technically, you hadn't booked anything, so I don't see how it's theft." I took a breath. "I'm not going to cause a scene." "Good," she snapped back, smile still plastered on, "because this day isn't about you." She turned away before I could answer, and I realized she hadn't just taken my venue. She'd taken the narrative, made herself the center, and left me framed in the corner. We didn't stay long. Michael's hand found mine as we slipped out through the side garden, past a row of potted lavender and guests clinking rosé. No one stopped us. No one even noticed. By the time we reached the car, my heels were digging into the gravel like anchors. I wanted to scream, but I didn't know which part hurt worse, the theft, the indifference, or the performance. Michael started the engine but didn't drive. He looked at me, waited. I shook my head slowly. "I'm not crazy, right? I'm not imagining this?" "No," he said, "you're not." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out, a folded paper napkin, from the brunch. He handed it to me. "Read the back." I turned it over. It was smeared with someone's lipstick, but written clearly in blue ink was a note. "I thought she was already married once. Isn't that what her mom said?" My throat tightened. What does that mean?" Michael shrugged, but his voice was low, controlled. "I heard it too. Some woman talking to your mom by the wine display. Said she was sorry things hadn't worked out the first time. Your mom just nodded." I blinked. "I've never been married." "I know." But it didn't matter, did it? The story was already circulating, and I hadn't even heard it. That night, back at our apartment, I couldn't sit still. I pulled out my laptop, but I wasn't looking up vendors or venues anymore. I opened the group chat I'd muted months ago, the one with my extended family. 50 people, holiday greetings, cousins' baby photos, the occasional forwarded meme. I searched my name. One message stood out, from my aunt sent weeks ago. "So sorry to hear about Jessica's situation. If she ever wants to talk, I'm here." I had never replied. I hadn't known what situation she meant. Now I did. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Jessica?" "Aunt Dana, can I ask, what did you mean by my situation in the group chat?" A pause. "You don't know?" "Know what?" Another pause, then a sigh. "Well, your mom said you'd had a sort of breakdown after your last job, and that the engagement might be impulsive, that you weren't in a stable place emotionally." I stood in the center of our kitchen, completely still. "I didn't lose my job. I quit. On good terms." "I figured," Aunt Dana said softly. "It just didn't match what she told us." "And she said I was married before?" "I think she said almost married, that you left someone at the altar, but honestly, I didn't press. It felt personal." I thanked her, hung up, then stood there for a long time. They were rewriting me, not just ignoring, not just undermining, rewriting my choices, my milestones, my image. And Heather, she was stepping into the blank spaces they carved out of me, wearing my colors, hosting my brunch, playing the golden girl. I walked back to the living room. Michael looked up from the couch. "I'm not letting them do this," I said. He nodded. "What do you want to do?" "I want them to say it to my face." I wasn't going to email, I wasn't going to call, I was going to see them, on their turf, without warning. Let them look me in the eye and lie. The parking lot at Hillside Country Club smelled like cut grass and old money. I hadn't been there in years. Not since Heather's high school graduation brunch, where Mom spent the whole meal reminding the table I'd graduated a semester late, but with such charm. It was Saturday, noon. I didn't text, I didn't knock. I walked through the lobby like I still belonged there. I spotted them instantly. Mom's pale pink sweater set, Dad's posture, leaned slightly back, hand around a lowball glass like he was conducting a board meeting. They were at a long outdoor table with 6 other people, neighbors, maybe. Golf buddies, I didn't care. I walked straight up, my heels hit the stone tiles with clean, even strikes. Mom looked up first, surprise, then calculation. Jessica, what a surprise. I didn't sit, I didn't smile. I'd like a word. Now, one of the other women, thin, silver-bobbed, tilted her head. Is everything all right? No, I said. But it will be. Dad stood slowly. He wasn't used to being challenged in public, especially not by his daughter. Jess, this isn't the time. Then make time. He glanced at Mom, then gestured toward a side path. Let's step away. We walked 50 feet, just far enough for the others not to hear, but close enough they could still watch. Good. I wanted them to watch. I know what you've been telling people, I said, voice low but clear. Mom folded her arms. You'll have to be more specific. You said I had a breakdown, you said I was unstable, you implied I'd been married. Her eyebrows rose just slightly. We didn't say married, we said close. I wasn't. Dad's voice was flat. We were trying to manage expectations. People worry when things move fast. I stared at him. You mean you worry about how I look, about what people think, about not being able to explain why your oldest daughter isn't a Stepford wife with a pastel Pinterest wedding? He didn't answer, so I kept going. You didn't just ignore my engagement, you sabotaged it, you went behind my back, you gave Heather our venue, you funded her party, and you turned me into a punchline to make it easier for people to root for her. Mom's voice dropped to a hiss. This is not the place. Exactly, I said, and yet you made it the place to tell strangers your version of me. Dad tried to step in, but I held up a hand. No, you don't get to control this, not anymore. Mom's jaw clenched. What do you want, Jessica? I want the truth. I want you to look me in the eye and admit it, that you chose her. Silence. She didn't deny it. She didn't blink. She just said, Heather makes things easier. 3 words, that's all. But they cracked something I didn't even know was still holding me up. Not prettier, not smarter, just easier. Less challenging, less assertive, less visible. I turned, started walking back toward the table. Where are you going? Dad asked. To say goodbye? He didn't follow. I passed the curious stares. I reached the table, smiled, wide and sharp. Just catching up with my folks. They were filling me in on the real story. I let it hang there, let the unease ripple across the group. Then I walked away. No storming, no tears, just a woman who'd seen behind the curtain and refused to shrink. I didn't text anyone, I didn't call ahead, I just walked in. It was a Thursday evening, 2 days after the country club confrontation. The meeting was being held at Heather's friend's event planning office downtown. That office had once been the exact space where Michael and I discussed layouts for our reception. Now it bore Heather's name on the chalkboard outside. Heather and Ben, timeline finalization. I stepped into the room and the temperature shifted instantly. They were seated in a semicircle. Mom, Dad, Heather, the planner, and a few others I didn't recognize. My sister was in mid-sentence. Some joke about floral installations. She froze when she saw me. My mom's lips parted like she was about to protest, but she didn't get the chance. I smiled, soft, cold. I just wanted to hear the plan, since it affects me. Heather tilted her head, mock gentle. Jessica, this really isn't your space. I stepped forward, still calm. You made it about me the moment you took everything I had planned for my future and dressed it up as yours. The planner looked between us, nervous. Should I step out? No, I said. Stay. Everyone should hear this. Mom tried to stand. Jessica, let's not ruin this for your sister. For my sister? I repeated. Ruin what? Her borrowed event? Her performance in my spotlight? Dad finally found his voice. Jessica, you're being dramatic. No, I'm being exact. I turned to the planner. Did Heather mention that the guest list she used was mine? That the venue was originally toured by me and Michael? That the floral palette was lifted straight off the presentation I paid to have designed? The planner blinked. Heather said it was a family vision. Was it? Heather stood up now, fast, controlled. You left gaps, Jess. You hesitated. You didn't commit, so I stepped in. I didn't hesitate. I waited, I gave respect, and while I waited, you tore my name out of the story and wrote your own. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Because for once, every eye in that room was on me, and no one had an answer. Heather crossed her arms. So what? You want to make this about you? Throw a tantrum? Embarrass yourself again? No, I said. I came to say this. You can keep the vineyard, keep the flower walls and the borrowed playlist, but you will never again use my name to justify your narrative. Not at brunches, not in clubs, not with cousins. You will speak about me like I'm in the room because from now on, I will be. A silence dropped. Even Dad sat back in his chair. I walked to the door, paused, turned to the planner. And just for clarity, if you're putting together a wedding video, I don't consent to having my face appear without a release. She nodded quickly. Then I left. Outside, I exhaled for the first time in hours. Michael was waiting in the car. He didn't ask what happened. He just reached over, squeezed my hand once, and said, "Ready?" I looked at him. "No, but I'm going anyway." The invitation came in the mail, hand-delivered by a courier, as if that made it more elegant, or more avoidable. Heather's bridal shower, Saturday 2 p.m., hosted by Elaine Morgan Country Garden Tea House, hosted by my mother. That was the part that stung. Not the lace edging, not the RSVP card with floral checkboxes, but the signature. As if I'd vanished from the family tree and they'd grown new roots. I didn't RSVP, I just showed up. The garden was pastel and curated to death. White parasols, cucumber sandwiches, wrought iron chairs that screamed, "Don't sit too long." Guests wore blouses the color of powdered sugar and smiles that looked barely fastened on. When I walked through the side gate, I felt the ripple instantly. A pause in chatter, a sudden adjustment of napkins. Heather was seated at the head of a long table, surrounded by gifts wrapped in muted elegance. She wore a crown of artificial wildflowers. It matched the invitation's palette. My mother looked up from pouring tea. She blinked. Once, twice. "Jessica," she said, like my name was a raindrop that ruined a watercolor painting. I smiled. "Mom, you look very beige." There was no seat for me, not that I expected one, so I stood, near the fountain. Just far enough to be inconvenient, just close enough to be seen. I made no announcement, no toast, no scene. I just watched. Heather glanced at me once, then quickly turned away, focusing on a story about Ben's proposal that had changed at least 3 times since last month. I let it wash over me, every compliment, every fake laugh, every toast about grace and elegance and ease. And when the gift opening started, I moved. I walked to the display table, the one covered in presents. I found the box with my name on it, the gift I had sent 2 weeks ago before I knew the full extent of what they'd done. It was a vintage book of poetry, custom-bound with Heather's initials. A real gift. Thoughtful? I picked it up. Heather's voice caught. "Jessica, what are you doing?" I looked her straight in the eye. "You don't get this part of me." Then I turned to the other guests, smiled politely, and walked right out of the garden, the gift in my hand like a flag reclaimed. They didn't follow, and I didn't flinch. Outside, Michael waited in the car again. This time, he didn't ask. He just looked at the book in my hand and said, "Good." That night, I placed the book back on my shelf. Not out of spite, out of truth. It belonged in a place where stories weren't stolen, and I was just beginning to write mine. The morning after the bridal shower, I didn't cry. I made coffee, I opened my laptop, and I started over. Not just the wedding plans, my plans. Michael came into the kitchen, still groggy, hair flattened from sleep. "Is that what I think it is?" I didn't look up. "It's a venue search," his eyebrows rose. "For a different date?" "For a different world," I said. "One where I don't ask for permission." He sat beside me, barefoot, watching as I deleted files with Heather's name, erased shared Pinterest boards, archived the ivory dress folder I once thought represented me. I chose slate blue, not blush, not beige, not mother approved. We picked a rooftop venue downtown with exposed brick and string lights and a view that could make anyone believe in second chances. It wasn't grand, it was intentional. When I told Michael I wanted the ceremony to be small, 20 guests max, he nodded like he'd been waiting for me to say it. And then I added, "My parents won't be there." He paused. "You sure?" "They had a chance," I said. "They used it to rewrite me." Michael leaned back, watching me. "What do we tell them?" "Nothing." I clicked save on the new deposit. They'll find out when they're not invited. That decision felt heavier than I expected. Not cruel, just real. They hadn't just ignored my engagement, they'd humiliated me publicly. They'd taken pieces of my story and scattered them like confetti at someone else's celebration. So I took the whole script away. That week, I met with the new planner. I wore jeans, no makeup, no pretense. She asked about my vision. I said, clarity. She smiled like she understood. We planned a ceremony under the open sky. No aisle, no speeches, just vows, music, and witnesses who actually knew my name. I sent the invites myself. Not through my mother, not through Heather. Every envelope had my handwriting on it, and when I got to my parents' names, I stopped. Then I took their invitation, tore it in half, and fed it to the shredder. It wasn't anger anymore, it was peace. Because I knew something they didn't, this wasn't about revenge, it was about removal. They had removed me from their version of family, so I removed them from mine. A few days later, I got a message from my cousin Natalie. Is it true you're having a wedding next month, without family? I wrote back, only without the ones who thought I didn't need one. No further explanation. A week passed, then another, until one afternoon, my phone rang. Block number, I let it go to voicemail. When I listened later, it was my dad. His voice, unsteady, like he'd practiced the call and still got it wrong. Jessica, your mom said, you're having some kind of event, a private thing? I just wanted to ask if we could talk. I think we may have misunderstood some things. I didn't delete the message, but I didn't respond either. They wanted me easy, silent, gone. Now they'd get distance instead. And next week, I'd stand on that rooftop, speak my own vows into the wind, and finally become the version of myself they refused to see. The rooftop air smelled like jasmine and rain. The sky held that soft silver just before sunset. Every chair was occupied. Every guest someone who had walked beside us through real miles, not just bloodlines. I stood in front of Michael, hands slightly trembling, but not from nerves, from certainty. He smiled like he'd known this day would come even before I had. Our vows were private, spoken just loud enough for each other to hear. No microphones, no readings from parents, no performative toasts, just truth. Then we kissed, and for a moment, I felt weightless. Then I turned, and my stomach tightened. She was standing by the service elevator. My mother, uninvited, unannounced, holding a gift bag like it could undo 2 years of silence and sabotage. Her eyes scanned the crowd, but she wasn't crying. She wasn't even ashamed. She was observing, like a scout who missed her own war and came back for the post-battle ruins. Michael noticed her too. He stepped closer, instinctively shielding me. I whispered, don't, because this wasn't his to fight. I walked toward her, each step cut cleaner than the last. She met me halfway. No embrace, no apology, just a tight smile. I heard it was today, she said, her voice soft but rehearsed. You look beautiful. Thank you, I said evenly. You weren't invited. She tilted her head. I know. So, why are you here? She hesitated, then held out the bag. I just thought maybe you'd want something old. Inside the tissue paper was a brooch. Silver, filigree, my grandmother's. I blinked. You kept this? She wanted you to have it. I didn't think it mattered anymore. It mattered, I said, but you didn't. That made her flinch, just barely. Then she straightened. I'm sorry, Jessica. I know we hurt you. I waited, but that was all she said. No acknowledgement of specifics, no admission of what had been taken, no apology for the public erasure, the lies, the silence, just hurt. As if it had floated in from somewhere else. You didn't just hurt me, I said. You made me small, over and over, in front of people I loved. You made me a footnote in my own story. She shifted. The crowd behind us buzzed, guests laughing, servers clearing glasses, friends posing for photos. My wedding carried on like a parallel world. I thought you'd be softer by now, she murmured. I thought time would heal me, I said. No, time just showed me who to stop waiting for. I handed the brooch back. Give it to Heather. Maybe it'll match the brunch set. That one landed, her expression cracked. She took the bag and nodded once, then turned. No hug, no scene, just slow, quiet retreat into the elevator. I walked back to Michael, who hadn't moved from the archway. His hand found mine. You okay? I exhaled. I am now. And I was. Not because she left, but because I hadn't. I'd stayed, I'd stood, I'd married without her permission, and I didn't need her applause. We'd just come back from the honeymoon. 3 days in the mountains, no cell service, no internet, just forest, wind, and the feeling of finally arriving somewhere I'd built myself. The morning we returned, I made coffee, humming, barefoot in the kitchen. Michael unpacked the last bag, tossing our jackets on the couch. We were laughing about something, the way he'd tried to cook trout over an open fire and burned the foil. It felt like the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. Not a reaction, not a defense, just joy. Then the doorbell rang. It was a courier, same company that had delivered Heather's shower invite. I froze. Michael opened the door, signed, took the envelope. Thick, cream-colored, my father's handwriting on the front. Jessica Morgan Taylor. I opened it slowly. Inside was a cover letter on a law firm's stationery, and behind that, a formal amendment to their will. Signed, notarized, stamped. I skimmed the words, then reread them, and felt everything inside me harden. Michael watched me silently. I held the paper out. They've officially removed me. Not just from the wedding, from the estate, from the house I helped renovate when they said they couldn't afford contractors. From the lake cabin where I spent every summer between college semesters. From every memory that could have turned into inheritance. Heather now held it all. The wording was clinical, legal. In recognition of the familial adjustments in current relationships, the primary assets shall be transferred solely to... I didn't read the rest. Michael did. He didn't curse. He didn't sigh. He just looked at me and said, "They waited until you were married." I nodded. So I'd be too happy to fight. But I wasn't. Not anymore. This wasn't about money. This was erasure. Complete, deliberate. Heather got the party, the venue, the public blessing, and now the future. All tied up in ribbon and sealed with signatures. I sat down, silent. For the first time, I didn't have a plan. Michael knelt beside me. "What do you want to do?" And I told him the truth. I don't know. Because I didn't want their house. I didn't want the cabin. But I wanted them to admit what they were doing, not hide behind attorneys and letters and passive phrasing. I wanted a moment of honesty, a mirror held to the face of what they'd become. Later that night, I wrote them both. Not a legal response, a letter, just one paragraph. "You have made your decision, and now I've made mine. This door is closed, for good, not out of punishment, but protection. I hope the version of family you chose brings you peace." It did not bring me any. I didn't send it. Not yet. I left it on the counter, sat beside it, watched the city darken outside, and wondered, for the first time, if I could let go of not just their approval, but their presence. Completely. I didn't send the letter. I burned it. That might sound dramatic, but I needed fire, not words. The next morning, I stood on the balcony of our apartment, held the envelope over a clay bowl, and struck a match. It curled fast, turned black at the edges, then floated down into ash like it had never meant anything at all. And that's when I knew. They'd already destroyed the version of family I was grieving. There was nothing left to explain. No plea, no proof, just choice. So I made mine. The first call I made was to our attorney, not theirs. I requested a name revision on all relevant documents, removing Morgan from any joint identification tied to the estate I was no longer part of. Just Taylor now, just me. Then I contacted the Cabin Association, the one where my parents still vacationed every fall. I asked to be removed from the emergency contact list. When the woman on the phone hesitated, I said clearly, "They are not my responsibility anymore." She understood. One by one, I unplugged. I removed myself from the family group plan, unsubscribed from the alumni board my father once chaired, the one I joined only because he wanted a legacy. I deleted the shared photo albums on cloud storage. And then, when I felt the void stretch wide enough, I made one addition. I bought a plot of land, tiny, barely an acre, on the edge of town near the arboretum where I used to walk with my grandmother before school. It cost less than my parents' dining room table, but it was mine. Michael didn't ask why at first. He just walked it with me, muddy shoes and wind in his hair, as I pointed out where I might build something someday. Not a house, a space. A structure that didn't echo with old voices or inherited shame. He paused by a patch of tall grass and said quietly, "We could plant something here." That was all I needed. We left a marker, a simple post, blank, but it grounded me, a symbol, a boundary. Back home, I packed the last physical things, photos, heirlooms, letters from my parents' world into a single box. I labeled it archive, not memory, and I pushed it to the highest shelf in the hall closet, not to access, to contain. Then I called my cousin Natalie, told her everything, not for validation, for record, because families rewrite history when you're silent. "I just want you to know," I said, "in case they tell it different." She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "I believe you." And it broke something in me. Not pain, relief, someone still saw the shape of what had happened. Someone still called it by its name. By nightfall, I sat with Michael again on the balcony. Same breeze, new breath. Do you regret anything? He asked. I thought for a long time, then said, only that I stayed silent so long they thought I agreed. The call came from a real estate agent, a woman named Dana, polite, slightly confused. I just wanted to confirm if you're still planning to sign the waiver. Your name is still listed on the original home equity agreement from years ago. I blinked. What waiver? A pause, then papers shuffled. The house your parents are selling on Hillcrest Lane? The house. The one where I learned to ride a bike, where I once wallpapered my closet with hand-drawn stars. The house I scraped and painted and renovated every weekend during my senior year of college. The one where I refinanced their second mortgage with my own credit because Dad said, we just need you to co-sign this one thing. It won't matter long term. Apparently, it mattered now. I asked Dana to email me the documents. When they arrived, I opened the PDF. My name, clear as day, still listed, still binding. They had tried to move forward with the sale without contacting me, hoping I'd forgotten or wouldn't notice. I sat in silence. Michael walked in, holding 2 mugs of tea. I didn't look up. He knew better than to ask. I printed the paperwork, took a pen, and under my name wrote, consent withheld. Then I scanned it back, sent it. The silence that followed felt nuclear. For 2 days, nothing. No email, no call. Then, on the 3rd day, my phone rang. Blocked number, again. I answered. It was my father. There was no preamble. You're holding up the sale. I didn't respond. He continued. We already have a buyer. We're under contract. I wasn't notified. You weren't required. I'm still on the agreement, I said. So yes, I was. A pause, then a sigh so sharp it felt rehearsed. Jessica, this is petty. No, I said calmly. It's legal. You don't want the house. No, I agreed. But I want you to remember who helped you keep it in the first place. Another long silence. Is this about the will? He asked. I laughed. Once. This is about the lie, the one where you pretended I didn't matter, even after I saved you from foreclosure. We didn't pretend. We moved on. That's what you call erasing someone? We didn't erase you. You tried. He didn't argue. That more than anything was confirmation. So, he said finally, what do you want? I let the silence stretch long, then said, I want my name off every document tied to yours. You want to sell the house? Fine, but you'll pay the legal fees to sever me from it. Permanently. You'll remove my name from all co-signed debts within 30 days. And if you ever try to use me again to secure something for Heather, I will make it public. You wouldn't. I would, I said. Not out of revenge, out of warning. Click, he ended the call, but not before I heard something in his voice I hadn't heard in years. Fear, not of me, of the version of me they no longer controlled. It came in a plain white envelope. No return address, no postage. Just tucked between the door handle and frame like a secret dared not spoken aloud. I almost tossed it until I saw the handwriting. Not my father's, not my mother's. It was Heather's. I hadn't seen it in nearly a year, but it hadn't changed. Wide loops, careful spacing. Too perfect to be spontaneous. I opened it on instinct. Inside, a single card. Heavy stock, no gold foil, no frills, just one line. I know the truth now. Meet me, 1 hour. Cafe Monroe, back patio, no signature, no explanation, just that. Michael saw my face and sat up from the couch. What is it? I handed it to him. He frowned. She wants something. Or she's ready. Ready for what? I didn't know, but I needed to find out. The cafe was 3 blocks from our apartment. Quiet, upscale, all white tile and eucalyptus. We used to go there every spring after brunch at Mom's. It wasn't a neutral choice. I arrived 10 minutes early, sat on the patio, ordered mint tea, watched the door. At exactly 1:00, she appeared. Heather, no makeup, no heels, hair tied back like when we were teenagers. She spotted me, hesitated, then came closer. Didn't sit, just stood. I'm not here to apologize, she said. Then why are you here? Because you were right. The words didn't hit like I expected. They didn't land, not yet. She finally pulled out the chair, sat, eyes on her hands. I found the messages. I didn't speak. She needed to say it first. I went through Mom's old laptop, the one she left at the cabin. She was still logged into everything. There were conversations about you, about what they told people, about what they said to your fiancé before he left. There. The air shifted. She glanced up, eyes rimmed red. They made it seem like you were unstable, controlling, that you'd stolen money from them and then blamed it on me. My breath locked, not because it was new, but because it was real now, verifiable, written. Heather reached into her bag, pulled out a flash drive, slid it across the table. I saved everything. I stared at it, didn't touch it. What changed? I asked. They turned on me, she said quietly. Over something small, a guest list. I saw how fast it happened, how they rewrote it. I saw what it looked like from your side. She was shaking slightly. I didn't come to beg, she said. I just needed you to know I see it now. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The past sat between us like a third chair. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. But I wanted to give you this, so they don't get away with all of it. I took the drive, not as a weapon, as evidence. She stood. And this time, I did too. No hug, no reconciliation. But something passed between us. Something unspoken but real. When she left, I stayed behind. Held the flash drive like it contained fire. And maybe it did. I didn't open it right away. The flash drive, it sat on our kitchen counter like a fuse waiting for a match. Michael didn't ask, but he saw it, knew what it was. I spent 2 days circling it, not because I was afraid of what I'd read, but because I already knew. It was the confirmation I feared, the cementing of every suspicion I'd tried to call paranoia. On the third night, when the rain came hard against our windows, I plugged it into Michael's laptop. He sat beside me, hand on my shoulder, folder after folder, organized by date, labeled in Mom's usual passive-aggressive shorthand. J confusion, meeting notes, fix later, and then re-Caleb email, the name of my ex-fiancé. My throat closed. I clicked it. There it was. A full transcript of an email thread. My parents, my sister, my ex. Every word clear. They'd written to him 2 months before the engagement dinner, warning him, manipulating him, making it seem like I was unstable, controlling, obsessed with marriage. My mother's exact words, she's becoming too much to handle. We're concerned she'll spiral if you say no. My father chimed in, we suggest you delay or reconsider altogether. Her reaction will validate what we're saying. And then, what I hadn't dared imagine, Heather replying, I don't think we should interfere, but if he backs out, I'll help soften things. She'll recover eventually. My hands went cold. That was the week he'd started pulling away. That was the week my whole world tilted and I couldn't figure out why. Michael didn't say anything. He just slid a glass of water closer. I scrolled through more. Therapist notes, private messages, snippets of group chats between them, half laughing, half plotting. They framed it like managing me, like I was a crisis to avert. My chest tightened. This wasn't just betrayal. This was sabotage, systemic, over years. A narrative they built brick by brick until even I started to believe something was wrong with me. Until I stopped trusting my own reactions. I shut the laptop, leaned forward, forehead against my knees. The kind of grief that doesn't cry, doesn't scream, it just sinks. Michael rubbed my back. And then I asked a question I hadn't voiced since I was a teenager. Was I ever wanted? He didn't answer, because the silence answered for him. I stayed there for a long time, then stood. Not to pace, not to rage, to act. I reopened the laptop, copied every file, stored it on 3 separate backups. Then I made one call. Not to my parents, not to Heather. To our attorney, the same one who helped me sever the mortgage ties. Hi, I said, voice steady. I need to arrange a meeting. I'm not suing. Not yet, but I want the record protected. In case they ever try to discredit me publicly, I want this sealed, time-stamped, and certified. Understood, she replied. Do you want to confront them first? No, I said. I want them to feel safe long enough to be careless again. The listing was public. They'd finally done it, put up the summer estate, the one in Maine. The one they'd hidden under shell companies and quiet transfers, assuming I'd never know they put it in Heather's name, years ago, while still using my financial contributions to maintain it. I had receipts, bank transfers, maintenance fees they'd guilted me into covering. You stay there the least, Mom had once said. It's only fair that you help from a distance. That distance became erasure. But here was their mistake. They never updated the land parcel register. One strip of shoreline still bore my name. Technically useless. Until it wasn't. I flew to Maine under a pseudonym, booked a room at a bed and breakfast across the cove. The auction was Saturday. In person only. I didn't dress up, didn't wear anything memorable, just jeans, sunglasses, confidence like armor. They were already there when I arrived. Mom, Dad, Heather. Their lawyer standing just behind them, flipping through a leather-bound binder. The auctioneer introduced the property, gesturing grandly. Full ownership transfer, clean titles, no contesting parties on record. I stepped forward. Objection, I said. The room turned. Mom's face drained like blood down a sink. I handed the auctioneer my documentation, a notarized deed of claim. The parcel was small, but perfectly placed. It cut across the main dock entryway. Without it, no buyer could claim uninterrupted access. The auctioneer blinked, flipped the pages. This supersedes the current transfer request, he said. Their lawyer stepped in, arguing fast, but it was too late. The bidders pulled back. 3 people stood up. The auction was suspended pending legal clarification, which meant stalled indefinitely. I turned to leave. No shouting, no confrontation, just cold silence behind me. But as I crossed the lobby, my father's voice echoed. "You've humiliated us." I turned. "No," I said. "You did that. The night you called me ungrateful for leaving you out of my wedding plans. Plans I never even got to have." He flinched. Mom stepped forward. "We didn't know it would go that far. You told him I was unstable," I snapped. "You let him walk away thinking I was a problem to fix, not a person to love." Heather stayed silent. Of course she did. She always did when they needed a prop. "You were always too sensitive," Mom muttered. "And you," I said, "were always too sure I wouldn't fight back." I left them standing there, not defeated, but exposed. Later, on the beach, I called Michael. He answered on the first ring. "Well?" "They can't sell." He laughed, low and soft. "You okay?" "I will be," I said, because the power wasn't in the land. It was in the boundary I'd drawn, a real one. Not emotional, not metaphorical, legal, uncrossable. For once, I was the one they had to ask for permission, and I wouldn't grant it. 2 weeks after the failed auction, a white envelope arrived. Another invitation, this time for Heather's wedding. Formal, stiff, printed with ivory embossing. The kind of invitation that comes with instructions on attire and parking, but no real acknowledgement of human history. My name wasn't handwritten this time, just printed alongside Michael's. As if nothing had happened, as if the previous year hadn't cracked my life wide open. I placed it on the counter. Michael raised an eyebrow. "You going?" "No," I said, and I wasn't angry, just done, not spiteful, not vindictive. Finished. The kind of finish that doesn't beg or demand closure. It makes its own. But I didn't throw the invitation away. I kept it. And on the day of the wedding, while Heather walked down an aisle lined with rented flowers and artificial reconciliation, I did something else. I sent a package. Flat, brown wrapped, no ribbon. Inside, the flash drive. And a printed note. "For the record you tried to erase. Let this be your family heirloom." I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. They'd know. I spent the rest of that day in a garden outside the city. Michael and I brought a picnic. Watched the sky turn gold, then lavender, then night. We didn't talk about them. We talked about our plans. The next trip. The new place we were looking at near the coast. A dog, maybe. The kind of conversations people have when they're no longer begging someone to see their worth. Later, when we got home, there was a voicemail. From my mother. No greeting, just breathing. Then flatly, "We received your package. If this is how you want to close the chapter, fine, but don't expect to be welcomed back." I didn't answer, because here's the thing about chapters. You don't need someone else to close them for you. You write the last line yourself. And I already had. No epiphany, no grand reconciliation, just a clean cut, no more calls, no more explanations. No more watching my life through a fog of someone else's story. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the one who remembered everything and refused to forget it just to make them comfortable. There's a power in that, not the kind that gets you applause, but the kind that lets you sleep, that lets you live, that lets you walk past a mirror and say, "She's still here," because she is, she always was. They just didn't see her, and now they never will again.